What's the very first memory you can recall? Something unexpected? A strange sound? A random flash of color? Or maybe a moment that didn't make sense back then, but stayed with you forever? Be careful with what you remember, because memories aren't always what they seem. In this episode, I want to tell you tragic and fascinating stories. People who lost all their memories, people who remember every single moment of their life, and even people who remember things that never really happened. And why this isn't science fiction anymore. Think about who you are for a moment. Your personality, your knowledge, your relationships. They're all built on your memories. Without them, would you still be you? Thomas Reid, this 18th century philosopher guy, connected memory directly to personal identity. But he wasn't saying memory makes you who you are. He was saying memory lets you know who you are. It's like this. When you remember your graduation, you know you were there because you remember it, not because someone told you, not because you saw a photo, but because you were actually there. Your memory is your evidence. But Reid made this really important distinction. Memory doesn't make you the same person over time. It just helps you know you're the same person. As he puts it, remembering an action doesn't make me the person who did it. It just lets me know I did it. This becomes super important when memory fails. If memory isn't what makes us who we are, but just lets us know who we are, what happens when those memories disappear? In 1953, a 27-year-old guy named Henry Molaison had brain surgery to treat his epilepsy. The surgeon removed big chunks of his brain, including most of his hippocampus and amygdala. Yeah, a lobotomy. The surgery kinda worked for his seizures, but it came with this devastating side effect. Henry could no longer form new memories. At all. For the next 55 years until he died in 2008, Henry lived in what scientists called the permanent present moment. Every day was brand new to him. Every person he met after the surgery was a stranger each time he saw them, even if he'd met them hundreds of times before, just like this guy Tom from the movie with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. Imagine meeting someone new, having a great conversation, leaving the room for 5 minutes, and then coming back to meet them for the first time again. That was Henry's reality, every single day, for over 5 decades. Susan Corkin, this neuroscientist who studied Henry for 46 years, described the relationship in her book Permanent Present Tense. Every time she left and came back, Henry would introduce himself as if they'd never met. It's mind-blowing. But Henry wasn't completely cut off from his past. He remembered stuff from before the surgery, and he could learn new skills even though he couldn't remember learning them. In one experiment, researchers had him practice drawing a star while looking only at its reflection in a mirror. Each day he swore he'd never done it before, but he kept getting better at it. When they asked how he could do it so well, he just said, "I don't know." Despite his memory loss, Henry was still Henry in many ways. Kind, gentle, good sense of humor, but his sense of self was frozen in time. He couldn't accumulate new experiences in memory, so his identity was stuck in 1953. Tim Adams from The Guardian wrote that Henry's operation had given him by default the kind of concentration on the present to which Buddhist meditation might aspire. He lived entirely in the moment, never sad or depressed, because he couldn't hold on to negative emotions any more than positive ones. And this case is fascinating because it shows that while memory informs our identity, it's not the whole ballgame. He lost his ability to form new memories, but remained himself in many fundamental ways. Now flip to the opposite extreme. What happens when you remember everything? In 1929, this guy with a broad face walked into Moscow's Academy of Communist Education, asking to see a memory specialist. His newspaper editor sent him there after noticing he didn't take notes during assignments. The man insisted he didn't need to. He just remembered everything. This was Solomon Shereshevsky. His memory abilities were off the charts. Alexander Luria, a neuropsychologist who studied him for almost 30 years, found he could recall long lists of numbers, words, and nonsense syllables perfectly, even 15 years later. But Shereshevsky's perfect recall wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. His world was overwhelming. For him, words weren't just words. They triggered tastes, colors, sensations. The number 1 was a slender man with ramrod posture. The number 2 was a plump lady with a complicated hairdo. He couldn't read newspapers while eating breakfast because the flavors from the printed words clashed with his food. Seriously, his mind was so stuffed with details that he struggled with abstract concepts. Everything was literal, specific, detailed. Now, and here comes the plot twist. A science writer, Joshua Foer, discovered that Shereshevsky wasn't born with perfect recall. He trained for hours every day before performing as a professional mnemonist. His nephew even confirmed he could be pretty forgetful if he didn't try to remember something. He had a special memory but trained with a lot of wild imagination. He created these vivid, multi-sensory mental scenes that anchored his memories. It wasn't that he couldn't forget, it's that he could remember with incredible richness when he wanted to. You could say that perfect memory isn't necessarily a gift, and forgetting might be just as important as remembering. So how does this memory thing actually work? How does your brain turn experiences into memories? Well, let me explain. Memory isn't one single process. It happens in stages. First comes the sensory register, where information hangs out for a few seconds. This is why you can still see an image after looking away or hear a sound that's already stopped. Then there's short-term memory, including working memory, that mental workspace where you juggle information. Finally, there's long-term memory, where stuff can stick around for days, years, or your whole life. When long-term memories form, your hippocampus grabs information from working memory and starts rewiring your brain. Literally, it creates new connections between neurons and synapses that stay as long as you use them. But here's the thing, your brain isn't a video camera. Memory's reconstructive, not reproductive. Each time you recall a memory, you're not playing back a perfect recording. You're rebuilding it from fragments, which makes it vulnerable to change. Daniel Schachter at Harvard found that the brain processes for remembering the past and imagining the future look almost identical on brain scans. What does that mean? It means that your memory doesn't just record what happened, it gives you building blocks to imagine what might happen next. And the worst thing is, despite how real our memories feel, they're ridiculously easy to mess with. Elizabeth Loftus had spent decades showing how easily our memories can be manipulated. In one study, people watched a video of a car accident. Researchers asked how fast the cars were going when they'd smashed into each other. A week later, many people remembered seeing broken glass in the video. There wasn't any glass. Never was. Memories born anew every day, Loftus says. Even scarier, her research shows that complex, entirely false memories can be planted through suggestion. A 2015 study in Psychological Science found that 70% of participants, after suggestive interviews, believed that they'd committed crimes that never happened. They developed rich false memories with sensory details of events that existed only in their imagination, and it has serious real-world consequences. Back in 1989, in Nebraska, 6 people were convicted of a murder they didn't commit. Through suggestive interrogations, 5 of the 6 accused came to believe they were guilty. 2 developed such vivid false memories that they could recall specific details decades later, even after DNA evidence proved their innocence. The phenomenon was so powerful that even after their exoneration, some of them struggled to accept their innocence. So, wrongful convictions based on faulty memories are disturbingly common. The Innocence Project found that mistaken eyewitness identifications contributed to about 69% of hundreds of wrongful convictions later overturned by DNA evidence. As researchers Toglia and Berman point out, in such cases, memory's the evidence. Given how malleable memory is, scientists have naturally wondered, could we deliberately manipulate memories to help people? In 2013, MIT researchers used optogenetics to implant false memories in mice. They made mice fear a place where nothing bad had ever happened to them. In another study, they managed to switch off negative associations in mice brains. Other researchers found that giving rats xenon gas at precisely the right moment could prevent traumatic memories from reconsolidating. More recently, researchers have started testing memory manipulation in humans. In one study, volunteers were exposed to unpleasant content to form negative memories. When researchers gave them the anesthetic propofol at the exact moment these memories were being reconsolidated, they couldn't properly recall the unpleasant content anymore. Dr. Steve Ramirez at Boston University found that memories can be strengthened, weakened, or modified after formation. Memories can be actively weakened after formation, he explains. Simply recalling a memory makes it more susceptible to being weakened, distorted, or erased. This is how propranolol helps PTSD patients. The patient recalls the trauma, which weakens the memory, then gets propranolol, which prevents the emotions from being re-encoded when the memory reforms. So let me ask you this. If we could selectively erase painful memories, should we? The TV show Severance explores this through a fictional procedure that separates work memories from personal memories. While it's science fiction, some people think that similar technology isn't that far off. Companies like Neuralink are already developing brain-computer interfaces to help paralyzed people control devices with their thoughts. While manipulating memory would be way more complex, the technological direction is clear. But the ethical questions get murky fast. Memory isn't just about storing information, it's tied to who we are. As Dr. Shen points out, if you don't remember who you are outside of work, do you even have a complete identity? Some would say that it would be nice to erase traumatic memories, but wouldn't that prevent us from learning important lessons? Would it dishonor our experiences? And who would control this technology? Could governments or corporations abuse it to manipulate people? You know what happens. If they can manipulate us, they will. So what now? How do we protect our memories as this science races forward? First, accept that your memory lies to you. Even your most vivid recollections can be dead wrong. It's just how brains work. Second, watch what feeds your memory. Every conversation, news story, and daydream can rewrite your past without you noticing. Third, train your memory like a muscle. Pay attention. Practice recalling important stuff. Try that memory palace trick where you mentally place memories in familiar spaces. It works. Your memories are precious. Guard them. But remember, you're more than just what you recall. You're also what you choose to forget, what you imagine, and what you become with each new experience. Memory isn't perfect, and that's okay.